Welcome. It's our first panel of the day. It's Milan Fashion Week and we're going to be talking about Jil Sander. I've got a wonderful panel with me, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Jack.
Hi, I'm Jack Tobin. I head up private shopping at matchesfashion.com.
I'm Izzy Lawrence and I'm a broadcaster, consultant and creator that works across science and arts and style.
I'm Chodha and I'm a fashion writer.
I'm Richard Mortimer, I'm the editor of Pony Step.
I like that you rocked when you started saying that. Very terrifying. Jack, tell me about Jil Sander at Matches. How long have you stocked Jil there?
So this will be our third season since we added it into our brand mix, which was mainly due to the fact that we picked it up when Jil came back to her label. But we also carry navy as well, which not so many people know about. It's not stocked so widely. It's Jil's diffusion line and it's more accessible, at a more accessible price point, and kind of the girls that love Jil but maybe can't afford that price point can dip into navy as well. So we carry the two lines at Matches.
I'm interested to say you picked it up when Jil came back to her label, because that leads me on to sort of a big question I wanted to ask about, which were we happy to see Jil go back to head up her label? Dal, what were your thoughts on that when she went back to Jil Sander?
When she returned, I think it was really, it's encouraging, it's quite nice. It kind of breaks away from, particularly at that time and where we're at now with these creative directors kind of coming in and being recycled quite quickly. I think everyone was probably a bit sort of tired of these press releases that kept coming out with new people moving to different houses. So to have someone return, I think is quite fascinating. And also, you know, someone who has, of her particular position and her point of view being a more mature woman designing for women, I think is quite unique. I think, you know, how many others are there? I mean, there's Westwood, maybe, there's a couple more, but I think for what she does, I think it's quite nice to see her come out. Throughout the whole show, I'm always really excited to see what she's wearing at the end. That's always my favourite bit, what she comes out in, because I think she really embodies...
She's so well dressed.
Yeah, she's just, you know, that's kind of what you want. If you were buying into Jil Sander, you'd buy into how she looked, for me anyway. But I think it was really exciting that she returned.
Do you agree with that, Richard? Were you happy to see her, or were you more of a Raf boy?
Well, it's weird, because I think when Raf first took over, I was slightly worried about how he was going to, you know, move forward with the label. And I think everyone was surprised at how amazingly well he did. And so then when the rumours, you know, started circulating that he was going to leave, you know, there was a lot of talk about who could replace Raf, because he did such an amazing job with the brand. And I think only Jil could have taken that job. And I think, you know, she's moved it in a slightly different direction. I think, you know, Raf introduced a real femininity to the brand that I think hadn't really existed there before. I don't think Jil has really taken that and run with it. I think, you know, she's really gone back in and put her stamp on it. But I don't think you can really compare them. You know, I think Jil is Jil and she does what she does, and, you know, I thought Raf did an amazing job at the brand. So I like Jil Sander. I think she's great. And, you know, I think it's nice that somebody is, you know, doing something hard.
I'm interested in a comment that Dal made about, you know, her being a female designer designing for women. Do you, Izzy, I'm kind of interested to get your take on this. Do you think that, because we've had this discussion a lot on panels and no one seems to know the answer and everyone kind of shies away from it a bit, which is, does it make a difference when it's a woman designing for a woman? Do you notice that when you shop? Do you look for Mary Katranzu or Miuccia Prada? Do you like buying pieces from female designers? Do you think there's anything in that?
Yeah, thinking about it, I definitely think there is a correlation in that I like, you know, I dress in a lot of female designers, and whether that's coincidence or luck of the draw, or whether it is actually their influence. Having said that, I think there's some brilliant male designers that design for women as well. And also, in a funny way, I mean, I find Jil Sander, in a way, quite, some of the designs quite sort of masculine in their sort of minimalist way. So in a way, she is designing for women, but it's a very sort of, it's almost, you know, going back to that quite sort of minimalist look and almost sort of 1980s sort of like box-like sort of shapes.
It's a bit dykey.
Well, you said it's more severe, didn't you? And that's true, because it's not more feminine just because she's female.
But everyone says that. Everyone's like, oh, you know, it's a bit power lesbian. But I kind of love that. I think that's such a great look. And I think, you know, when women can pull that off, it looks amazing.
But also I think that's a really unnecessary pressure to apply onto female designers as well, that they have to all of a sudden know the ins and outs of a woman's brain, just like men that are designing for men. I mean, it is, I know I kind of made the comment, but I think it's quite refreshing because there aren't that many, there are more coming, particularly with the kind of new generation of women designing for women. But I guess, yeah, you're right, it does have a certain Germanic masculinity about it, and a purity. I think I've read somewhere that she doesn't like the word minimalism, but I guess that word is kind of bandied about quite a lot with a lot of designers. But there is a real purity to what she does, and I think that's why most of us are quite excited to have her return, because you know, there are lots of people referencing her early work. So I quite like the fact that she's like, well, you know what, I'm back. I'm not even going to reference myself. I'm going to move it forward.
Is it too severe? I've thought that with a couple of her menswear feels quite poppy. It feels quite fun, especially the last collection with that neon. But with a couple of the women's collections, like especially the first one when she returned, I questioned who would wear clothes that were that severe. And I remember other journalists saying a similar comment.
I think they're more about Jill's more about pieces rather than looks, because if you actually go in the showroom and you see her collection, you'll just see kind of an endless series of coats that are all very similar, but when you start looking at the construction, it's how she seams things, or it's really like her core pieces are the coat, the shirt and trousers. When you know, going back onto like male designers designing for women and women designing for women, I think that's my idea of the main difference, is that men seem to design looks and women seem to understand pieces that women want. And what's interesting is seeing the Jill client as well, that the type of women that buy into her, many have returned since Raf left. So many women have come back to the brand since Jill's come back to it, and they've said, oh, this is the Jill that I loved, which is interesting because I think he was better from an editorial point of view.
Fashion perspective.
She is better at really designing pieces and coats and shirts that women really want. You know, like you said about power dressing, like working women, type of women that want that really great coat that's about luxury and timelessness and an investment piece. I think that's the key difference.
So who is the Jill woman that's coming in there? Is she a power lesbian? Who is she?
She actually isn't a power lesbian. No. She's definitely she's a very successful working woman. We see the kind of editors typically from, you know, the fashion side of things that like Jill's pieces, but then also, you know, women that are at the top of their fields across, you know, maybe more intellectual women. We definitely don't see, you know, we have different client bases that have the money to type of spend. Jill is not about trends, so we don't see like the footballers' wives buying into Jill pieces.
I hope the footballers' wives would never be too chic.
You know, so, and we see the kind of women that are just successful women in their own right, that maybe it isn't maybe necessarily their husband's money, it's their own money. You know, it's that those kind of women that buy into that. And interestingly as well, we weren't sure, we were hesitant at how somebody like Jill would work online as well, because typically you need pieces that really pop online. So print does really well because everyone sees those colours and it photographs really well, it looks great. Pieces that are about understated luxury don't translate so well, but actually we've found that it's selling really, really well online because Jill is, you know, it's understood as being such a luxury label that people, you know, if they can find it online, they are buying it. So it hasn't really translated like we expected it to. So we're seeing, you know, really, really good core customers coming through online and actual clients coming to private shopping as well.
I'd like to talk a little bit, you mentioned power dressing and we've kind of toyed with this idea a bit on the panels, but I'd like to explore it more with you guys of how notions of power dressing has changed, because to me it's not about wearing like a boxy suit now. I don't know, how do you feel when you're in a professional context? Do you feel the need to dress up? Do you want to wear a suit? You know, or do you think people
I don't feel the need to wear a suit, definitely. If I do wear a suit, it's probably a jumpsuit or something to an event. It's not going to be boxy suit, but that's my sort of personal preference. I definitely think there's something in making a statement. I just think maybe the statements that you're making have changed in the way that they look. What I find interesting about Jill's collections are it's so sort of, there's something very quiet about it, but very elegant and really strong at the same time. Maybe even the move that she did when she came back to her own brand is, in a sense, it's a sign of that strength, you know, and actually she's quite a sort of formidable businesswoman in many ways, and that comes across in both, you know, the movements that she makes within her own company and also in the clothes. But yeah, I don't think that power dressing will ever ever go. I think it's, you know, it's essentially, it's like that thing of having a sort of, you know, wearing an amazing dress or having an amazing look and sense of style is the sort of cherry on the top. It's like having the best agent in town or something, you know. It's very sort of, I think you've got to have substance underneath it, but yeah, I think style and showing off is very important.
But I feel like it's changed. I feel like for a while people felt like they had to dress like a man to be taken seriously. They had to wear a suit. They had to kind of, that horrible like power shoulders that we saw. And I feel like, I wonder when that was the point that disappeared and women started wearing like Mary Kachanzi to work or dressing kind of like how you and I are dressed today, because obviously we look amazing. And when was the point that kind of it didn't become about trying to look fierce or masculine? Because Jill's kind of doing that, so I wonder why that's still relevant.
I think people kind of say power dressing and they just think of tailoring.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is okay, because that's how I interpret it, you know. And it's the same with menswear as well. When you're in a well-cut jacket, you do feel slightly more, your posture's better, and all of that stuff. So that influences how you feel, making you feel more powerful in certain contexts. So I think when we say power dressing in relation, particularly to Jil Sander, you think tailored jacket. You know, the pieces that you were talking about that sell really well. It's kind of those well-structured things that may go on to make someone feel powerful. But I would argue if you're paying a lot of money for something, it should always make you feel powerful. I don't think it should necessarily, this whole lazy thing of power dressing means it shouldn't just be stuff you wear to work. Everything you wear should be, or give you some sort of power. But I think there's just too many bad magazines that kind of keep saying power dressing and showing us a picture of a woman in a trouser suit.
Yeah, or in a pencil skirt.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe just it's changed because maybe there's more equality as well between sort of genders within the workplace. So there's not this feeling that you have to sort of dress like a man anymore, maybe if that's what people were feeling before. I think that actually, you know, if you sort of describe the, you know, 21st century sort of successful female within the working place or whatever they're doing, maybe it's, you know, it's sort of totally different to how it would have been quite a few years ago. And I think that's maybe just comes from a sort of quiet confidence and also sort of, more equality, less misogyny within the workplace and just people able to be themselves.
But I guess we're quite privileged in a way that we don't work in those environments where those codes or those traditions are kind of, you know, in some HR person's drawer. So I don't even know whether we can comment on it properly, because unless any of us have ever gone to work in a bank or in a law firm, and I'm sure we've all got friends that do those things, it's only when you talk to them that you kind of realise that something like a Jil Sander jacket gives them power in that context, that a Mary Kachanzi dress might give someone power in a nightclub.
I think that's very true, because I hear from clients that say that they wouldn't be taken seriously if they were in a dress. So I think it's important.
That's a really good point, actually. They wouldn't. That was quite prompt. That was on time. Well done, Jill. Punctual for the workplace.
Very German.
I love what she does with the show space every time. I think that's one of my favourite things, how...
So that's why I think it's a bit unfair with Jill, how kind of tar it before even seeing it is, you know, saying it's not necessarily feminine, because it is really feminine.
Yeah, this feels super feminine.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the questions I was going to ask later is, have the sort of codes RAF created, have they kind of hung over at all? And I thought we were all going to say no, but then you look at that dress and even the neckline of that.
Yeah, that's an incredible dress.
Yeah, that's like the last collection he did.
They haven't hung over because he's taken them to Dior.
Initially though, that first collection when she came back, I think that's what made us question, you know.
But the code she kept, like she did keep the coloured soles on the bottom of the shoe. I think it was really discreet stuff that she did to kind of... But maybe you're right, maybe it's about her kind of putting her stamp back on it and then...
And letting them creep back in.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Jill's so clever at is proportions. The lengths of things so far are really interesting.
I noticed that a lot with her men's, you know, that really ultra baggy short that she did, and kind of it looked great on the runway, but it was such a quiet hit of the season, I thought. Just, you know, you didn't realise how striking it was until you saw everyone wearing it, and it was the Jill one that looked better than any other ones, you know. What's your take on this so far, Richard? Ooh, gone. Whenever I speak, the stream crashes. It always happens. I just need to be silent when we... Sorry.
I love it. I really love Jil Sander, and you know, I love just all the classic, really simple shapes. I don't really like it when she starts doing dresses, unless it's like, you know, nothing. I think I much prefer her when it's, you know, something really simple, really clean, an amazing coat, a really nice crop trouser. I think when she starts, you know, doing soft feminine dresses, I don't think it works.
So you're not a fan of some of the softer pieces we've
No.
seen?
I sort of feel the same, actually. I have to say, I think she's excellent. She's almost sort of defined the, you know, just a classic sort of brilliant cut, sort of very simple, very elegant. And when, for example, the dresses that were sort of white and sort of, you know, slightly sort of
Sort of
patterned.
white on white.
Yeah, white and white, sort of patterned, almost sort of.
Like a Devoré.
Yeah, it was. It just, I don't think are her best pieces, but I did love that the dress
black
or
with the
the.
look.
I'm not sure if it was trouser suit or dress, but with the long neck. But then again, that's just sort of elegant block colour. I kind of I don't really want to see her do a pattern, basically.
Well, I just think, you know, she sort of does it almost the best. I mean, I think, you know, Phoebe at Celine does that amazingly well too. But I think, you know, as you said earlier, she sort of defined that look, and you know, we shall see. I mean, let's see what she throws at us. But I think.
I wonder
keep it
what women
hard.
would go to her for a nice white dress. You know, you feel like...
Yeah, I
as you
don't
say,
think they
Yeah.
would. She's not a go-to brand for gowns or dresses. She's very much about a uniform that is her look that she translates across, which is the trousers, the shirt, the coat, and you know, her flat shoes, her brogues, and you know, sometimes she loves a trainer as well, doesn't she? She likes that smart look with a kind of like smart trainer.
Yeah.
Is Jill's look, and then it's other women that like that kind of look as well. For gowns, like you wouldn't really turn to Jill, would you? Or you wouldn't think straight away like, oh, Jil Sander gown. It's not really, but I think it's difficult for her for spring, summer. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you can't really show a whole collection of coats. You have to keep it light. So it's probably more challenging season for her, I think, than autumn, winter.
Well, picking up what you said earlier as well about kind of outfits, is that I think I read somewhere that she coined this, or someone coined the phrase, this onion look, which is
Oh,
basically
yeah,
like
the layering.
the
Yeah,
layering
yeah.
and peeling off, which is just hilarious. But that's really how she started off, you know, having her own shop and looking at what people were buying from her and kind of building up on a wardrobe. So that's obviously a really kind of key thing for Jil Sander as a brand.
As a
So
brand.
I guess you're invited to kind of almost explode the show and kind of blow it apart, and people that aren't privileged enough to sit in the showroom can rely on people like yourself to sell the best bits for whoever your customer is. And I think she's probably offering quite a lot to buyers.
Yeah, do you find that people do buy more than one piece? So they do go for this kind of onion?
No, not well, because what her collections allow people to do is carry it over. So if you buy a Jill coat, then you can invest next season in another piece that goes. It's not so trend driven or so seasonal that looks totally gone.
Yeah.
You know, a classic Jill coat is, you know, it's so well constructed, so well made. It's going to last you right through. So it's kind of people invest in those pieces season on season. So she's clever like that, rather than just having instant hits in the season.
Should we have a little break while we try and get a stream back or go to images? Yeah? Cool. So we're back on air. We're talking about the Jil Sander Spring Summer 14 collection. Unfortunately, the stream has gone down, but we have wonderful images to look at the collection from. And we were just talking about how surprised we were that she's done dresses this season. Jack, you were saying that women don't usually come to Jill, especially at matches, for a more feminine piece.
No, exactly. It's not like the association you'd immediately make with, you know, Jil Sander and gowns. There's many other designers that do gowns really, really well. It's not really her niche. You know, she's stronger in other product categories. So I'm sure that the buyers probably won't be turning to Jill for gowns. Maybe like one or two if they're particularly strong. But really, it's not like the buy that is most considered.
Richard, you saying you don't like it when she does a dress?
Yeah, I just think her strength lies in really minimal looks, like just really perfect tailoring, just hard lines, and I think that's where she really excels. And I think when she tries to soften that and do something that feels a lot more feminine, I just don't think it works. I think other people do it much better than she does, and I think, you know, she should really play to her strengths.
I'm interested because when some of her collections from, you know, if you look at some of her 90s work, she does do really beautiful, quite feminine, you know, dresses, especially the all-white collection. I think it's really, really beautiful. But maybe it's really interesting that you say that, given what you said earlier, Dal, about how copied she's been for doing that kind of power dressing. It's because it's so, the iconic pieces that people have sort of diffused from Jill are those separates and those more powerful pieces. So maybe that's kind of removed her from dresses, even though actually it's something she has always kind of
I don't know whether also
yeah.
it's like a really, again, another unfair pressure that we're putting on her, as if she's like a new designer, we want her to kind of radically, I think that she's probably thinking that, I don't know, it's a difficult one, you know, she's good at one particular thing, but I'm guessing she's come back and wants to progress. You know, as a designer, you're learning every single day. You don't just call us a stop. And I guess she's still wanting to push herself, which is why I find it quite interesting where she does like dresses and things like that, and they may not work, but I'm glad that there's some exploration, because I think if she just bashed out a collection of great cut trousers and great coats, then we'd all have nothing to talk about. And I think it's interesting that she's kind of pushing it slightly, and you know what, maybe they won't get bored, but at least they're part of the conversation, and they actually throw the tailoring and the jackets and the trousers into a spotlight, because you've got that contrast.
But do you not think that she really explores new things, like new territory with her tailoring? Because it's never just like a normal skirt straight up and down. It's always something quite interesting and, you know, slightly off. And I think that's where she should sort of, you know, try new ideas out, like classic pieces, but just pushing the structure.
Do you feel that feels especially exciting at the moment just because of the lack of kind of tailoring innovation we're seeing? You know, people often comment about that with London, like it's, especially they talk about it with the men's but also the women's. It's a shame that we don't see more people doing something dynamic with tailoring. Do you think
no one knows how to?
Yeah,
Those just kids don't know what. Most of the ones that you see, they don't know what they're doing. Lots of the stuff that gets lauded is visually interesting, and it's interesting that you use the term pop. Stuff that pops on a screen in e-commerce tends to be the stuff that pops off the pages of magazines and things like that. And you know, lots of those designers that are still graduating, they're very heavily influenced by all of that stuff, which is normal and fine, but a lot of them don't really know how to kind of think of a body, regardless of men's or women's, in 3 dimensions. So that's why we see, I mean, all of those, most of London for me just look like photocopies. They're just flat clothes. And I guess that's why when someone as experienced as Jill comes around, it's really refreshing for people like us that love construction and understand fabric and understand that that's actually what makes a designer, not just throwing a print on a dress.
I think that's really, really true, and I think that's why the type of women that buy into Jill are the type of women that have an understanding of that. That's why they turn to it, because you're right in saying that a lot of young London designers, they don't know anything about tailoring.
Well, you did the Central St Martin's, the MA, that, you know, sort of so many people
nothing about tailoring.
Nothing.
You don't come out of that knowing about how to tailor. It takes years and years. You don't get, I mean, you know, I've worked, you know, with a Savile tailor previously, and you know, it's not until you've been doing it your whole life that you really truly understand really how to tailor.
Did people even want, you mentioned, you know, there was nothing about tailoring at the MA, but did people even see that as something important to learn to construct?
Because it's like high impact looks. You know, it's not about that. It's about that whole kind of like editorial kind of get attention kind of thing. And you don't get that from subtle looks like this that's all about cuts. I mean, one thing about Jill, and this is interesting, is that she designs for an international woman that travels quite a lot. So she, if you look at her coats and the way they're cut, the seams on how she does things are designed to be able to travel well and sit well. So it's very clever and very subtle, the cutting that goes into it, but very, very considered. London designers, you know, that are just starting, whatever, don't take those kind of things into consideration at all. And if you look at some of her coats, some of them are unlined as well. And it's like beautiful cashmere that it's not double-faced, but if you turned it inside out, you know, the seaming is like absolutely faultless. And you know, you can roll those coats up, or you can travel on a 12-hour flight. And you know, it's the type of women that do that. They want their cashmere Jill coat on. They keep it on the whole time. They step off the plane, and it's immaculate still. It's that kind of consideration. It's not like, you know, jazzy print, high
You're
impact.
really selling it to me. I'm like, God, I need to go to these matches and buy some Jill.
That's what I do for a living.
Yeah, you are very good.
Yeah, he is really good.
Well, yeah, I mean, selling very high price point pieces anyway is challenging in itself. But you know, the type of women that, you know, understand this, they get it, and that's why they're willing to spend. You know, Jill's coats are like between £2,000 and £3,000. So you'd spend that on a Jill coat. You wouldn't really spend that on like a young London designer. You think they kind of bashed it together. You know, had very small production run done on it. The quality is, you know, it's not necessarily
there. Was a good piece, wasn't there? It was about 6 months ago in the Business of Fashion, which talked about how that is a problem with some of the London ones, even the more established designers. It arrives in store and it's just not well
good
enough made. Yeah, it's literally just not good enough. Whereas you don't seem to think you'd have a problem with that with this. It is beautiful looking.
I think she actually has pushed out her own sort of boundary as well in this collection. I think the maxi dress that she's done is really impressive. I think it's still very elegant. It's still it's still saying something sort of new. It's not so much the sort of suits and trousers and this sort of layered onion look that we were talking about before. It's kind of, it's one piece, but it still feels very her. But then I feel differently about the prints and the sort of
I think
and
this
the white
is beautiful
dress.
though. I love that she does, because it nods to that tailoring that you were talking about, Richard. But it's it's a beautiful dress. So you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, personally, I would be quite happy if I never saw a maxi dress again. I just think I just cannot bear them.
Why not? Why do you hate them?
I don't know. I just do. I don't know. I don't even have a reason for it. I just think they're idiots.
I've never worn
I think they're
maxi
really
dresses,
unflattering.
yeah.
I just think...
I thought the neckline on that one was really...
I just... Yeah.
Do you like maxi dresses? Do you wear dresses? Do you wear dresses?
I do wear dresses. I'm more... I don't wear them as frequently as I wear sort of trousers and top. But no, I love dresses, and if I go to events, whatever, Cannes Film Festival, different things, you have to wear, dresses or gowns and things. And you're right in that I would never...
You never go, I'll go have a look at what Jill's done.
Exactly, not for sort of evening wear in that way. But maybe now I will. I don't know, I was impressed by that, and I definitely...
Do you hate maxi dresses, Rich? What do you want to see girls wearing? What do you like it when?
Really hard, amazing trousers and a really stiff
lesbian
blouse.
power.
Or really amazing sort of stiff shift dress, or hard, clean lines. I just think it looks so chic on a woman. Tough.
What do you think of the kind of... Because I've been thinking a lot about this, how we saw so much kind of girlishness in the menswear, so many frills and fluffy bits, and I thought it was quite interesting that women have become, people are sort of so supportive of what we're seeing Stella doing and Celine doing, and it's hard, it's very clean and very hard, and then on the men's we've got all this kind of fluff and frivolity. It just seems quite... I wonder if this is going back to what you were saying about just changing sort of gender setups full stop. It just seems maybe... I don't know, why does that feel now to see girlish men and sharp women?
I think there's there's been a move away from it's gone, there's a sobriety to what Jill's doing, and there's a move away from all of that girlishness and that colour and all of that, obviously Phoebe started it kind of with Celine, and it's carried on going through now, and then men it's doing the reverse probably.
Why is it doing the reverse, do you think, on the men?
I think because women, it's interesting that the term power dressing keeps coming up, because you think power dressing and then you think it's got to be like a structured shoulder, but with as the starting point. But with Jill, it's more like a kind of cleanness and like a woman that doesn't need to scream. It's like I can be really understated, and that's
like
making
a quiet,
me powerful.
It's sort of a quiet
confidence.
Exactly. Elegance and confidence to it.
And maybe men, it's kind of like the reverse now. Maybe it's like, actually I don't need to be so quiet and so sober. I can experiment, and actually it's making me look quite not necessarily powerful, but it's making me look confident in the fact that I have the ability to wear colour and print.
Does that reflect society's attitudes towards gender at all, do you think, or is that just a fashion thing?
I think it's a shift probably in society.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's definitely like a freedom maybe for both genders. Like maybe it feels more free for women to be able to dress elegantly, and quietly, without sort of feeling that, they need to wear a dress or whatever in that situation, but they can just sort of wear what they want, and if it wants to be sort of quiet brilliance or whatever, then that's fine. And for men, maybe it's that they can, whatever, be a bit flamboyant and still be men and still wear lots of colour. I mean, personally, I, love seeing guys with a pop of colour and different things. Can work really well.
I think also the other thing with Jill that we've not really touched on is you pay a lot of money for these clothes, but it's also about how they move. And I think any sort of really high-end label, you see somebody walking down the street in an overcoat that is really expensive, you can tell just by the way it moves that it's expensive. And you don't really see that when you're looking at stills, but I think that is, it's such an important factor.
Are we losing that a bit? I've been thinking quite a lot about that kind of idea of luxury, and do you think we are losing that a bit? Pieces that look really, really expensive, because this goes back to what you were saying about everything looking like it'd been photocopied. I feel like maybe you can probably actually give us some light on this at Matches, for a younger shopper, they don't really care if it looks expensive because they probably don't even realise what looks expensive. You know, they're so drawn in. It's like the Instagram effect on fashion. They're so drawn in by things that make an immediate statement that actually their desire in fashion doesn't go as far as, does this look really great? Will this travel well on an airplane? They just think, you know, will this look great?
Definitely.
First up. Do you see that?
It's all about the instant. And like I mean, I have a varied team, but the younger girls on the team, they do not get anything subtle or anything that's not like the latest, you know, screaming the latest print or the latest whatever.
They wouldn't be excited by Jil Sander.
No, it takes a different type of person to represent this brand and to sell it, like, and to the type of woman that wants it. Because if in anything kind of, I would say, this is maybe a blanket statement, but below 25, they just don't get it. It's not about quality of construction, and it's Kenzo, and it's, you know, the now of it all. But that's always the way it's been, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not. I don't think that's a new thing.
No.
I think that's why a lot of us, and I do say us, like Jil Sander, because it is mature and it's so away from all of that stuff, which is so important. That is fashion, really, in a larger sense. But I think that's why this is so refreshing, because it is so mature and it's so sort of
fashion.
Yeah,
but hasn't
in
fashion
a way
always been like that? You've always had your immediate throwaway stuff, and there's always been a demand for luxury.
Yeah.
You know, in the 80s you would go to Kensington Market and you'd get your, you know, your quick fashion fix, but, you know, you'd still have the big solid luxury brands.
But I question if the generation that has grown up so much with the internet, whether within that generation there is going to be those two different things. There's going to be the people that want the kind of throwaway, and there's the people that want the real expensive luxury, because I feel like luxury has become so much about that instantaneous visual. You know, they would see something like Kenzo as luxurious because it makes a statement straight away. So I just wonder, with that real younger generation that are coming up, looking at live streams and looking at Instagram and following fashion on the internet, where that luxury shopper's going to come and what they're going to define as luxurious.
Yeah. Well, for me, as a writer, I'm sure you'll concur, is my big issue is the way that we use words. Fashion has just totally, you know, blown up a dictionary. So you have like a python, lime green, Proenza Schooler jacket that's called an investment piece in a major, well-known magazine. So when people are reading that stuff, someone's put that word there, investment. Now, to me, that I think that's not an investment at all. It's something you can buy into, for sure, but it's certainly not an investment. I think those words that come around investment, you used it a lot when talking about Jil, and I think that in the right way. But then when you're kind of going around looking at a magazine and it says this, you know, £6,000 American Transue skirt is an investment, that's what they're growing up in as well, you know, because it's a very two-dimensional.
Has the internet fueled that, do you think? Because it's made fashion writing less considered?
I just think there are too many jobs in fashion and there are not enough good people. So there are lots of people writing things that are not very good.
Do you agree, Richard?
Absolutely. For me, it's so hard to find good fashion writers. I think, you know, it's the one thing that, you know, when you find somebody good, you've really got to keep them. Because, I mean, you go on the internet, some of the stuff you read, it's so bad.
Yeah.
And you just think...
And it's on under good titles. That's what I find really distressing.
And I just think, what qualifies these people to write this? And, you know, I despair sometimes when I read things. And, you know, there are a handful, especially in London, that there are some really, really good writers.
Yeah.
But people gravitate towards, you know, the gossip sites and...
Going back to what you were saying, I think that luxury is the most overused and ill-used word, though. It's like in association with Jil,
It means
I think
expensive.
you really can use luxury with this, but so many other collections that, you know, call themselves a luxury brand, really it's, you know, it's differentiating between, you know, it should be broken down more into maybe like a premium brand, not necessarily luxury is supposed to be the absolute pinnacle, and there's many brands that call themselves luxury and they're really not, but I think Jil is a brand that you could say
also overpriced and expensive does not mean luxury, sort of by
Exactly.
proxy, you know, it's kind of nouveau riche and sort of awful does not mean luxury.
Yeah. So what are the labels that are doing luxury? Who's getting it right? So we all agree, I think, that Jil is getting it right. Is who else out there
I
is?
think Bottega is a luxury brand. I think Celine is a luxury brand. It's a difficult one. I think very few.
I put you on the spot a bit
I know,
as well
I know.
because you stock so many labels.
I
You
know.
can't like diss them.
I think London designers, the new gen. I think
it's high fashion, but it's maybe
high
not luxury.
fashion. Great concepts, great pieces. But I don't think you can really categorise them as luxury brands. But I don't think they would either. Really, they're not established enough to call themselves.
So
that.
what do we mean by luxury in that context?
I think it's like fabrication, it's quality of make, it's exclusivity. It's many factors.
To me,
isn't it?
it's anonymity. Actually, that's what I look for
That's interesting.
when it's luxury, because that is the pinnacle.
Well, that's the Bottega thing.
My big thing is that I don't like when people are like, talking about, she's so stylish or he's so stylish, and you can literally pick them apart and go, well, that's that season, that's from there, that's from there. And I know that's knowledge that we have because that's our jobs, but actually I shouldn't be able to do that because there's nothing interesting about looking at someone and going, I know where all of that came from. There's no need to even talk to you about your clothes because they've told me everything already. They might have told me that the PR is the best friend of yours and lent it to you. They might tell me that you've got an Amex card or whatever. But there's no need to talk about clothes with a lot of people that are always kind of held up as real kind of style icons. So to me, it's labels that are quite quiet. So it's like your Stefan Schneiders, your sort of Christophe Lemaire's. It's sort of, part of New Gen 1205. It's sort of labels that are really quiet, and the right people know about them. There's another one, 22.4. The right people know about them, and that's kind of, and they're small, and they're not on Pinterest, they're not on Instagram. It's what we talked about Christopher Kane panel, It's that sort of, it's away from all of that stuff. So for me, there's a real luxury in no one looking at me on the tube and knowing where I've been shopping. That's luxury to me. It's that,
I think probably this is a bit controversial seeing as we're looking at the collections, but really true luxury isn't any of these brands at all. It's people that get their pieces made.
Well, you must have found this because you worked at Selfridges Bespoke.
100%. Like the type of clientele that you see that really want that level of luxury and have that money, they don't buy into any of this. This is all like fad to them. They get their pieces made. It's got no label inside it. It's the best of the best fabrics. It's been cut for them. That's the ultimate in luxury, I think, really. But then I shouldn't really say that because otherwise people won't.
You're like, this is luxury, darling.
But
this is nothing.
The type of clients you meet, you have people say things like that.
Yeah.
And they really are like, this is just like flash in the pan. They're like.
But that's what's interesting. It goes back to something that Dal and I have been kind of talking about, which is labels upping their prices because it's almost like they're trying to get into that sort of real high price point that you're talking about with the bespoke stuff. That's obviously sort of doing so well in this current climate because it's like ultra high luxury does really, really well. And I find it really interesting that high fashion brands are now trying to get away from being fashion and get up into being super.
Well, they're
super
trying
luxury.
to do that, aren't they? There's brands that are trying to do that, be able to offer people, made to measure or their own, way of doing things like that because they're trying to step into that category because yes, it is that level of the market that is doing really, really
still
well.
Spending, aren't they? Yeah,
exactly.
What do we think of this print? Let's get us back onto the collection. We all seemed a bit shocked by this and everyone's stunned into silence.
Yeah, I don't like it, personally. I definitely don't think it's her at her best.
There'll be a story behind this. That's the frustration. This will be an incredible artist. Yeah, it's
Shorts?
Short, tight shorts with a kind of a longer...
Sort of baggy.
Yeah, tunic-y top.
I like it.
Why do you like
it? It reminds me of sort of children's television in the 80s. Sort of like
Art
wallpaper.
Attack.
Yeah.
Art Attack,
Neil
the
Buchanan needs to be name checked on the press release. But
it's quite Scandinavian, isn't it, in its simplicity? I quite like that because it does still feel very... I know she doesn't like the word minimal, but even though that's an incredibly fussy print, if you actually look at the shapes, they're quite...
And the placement of it, my eyes just looking at that green, what looks like a bag.
Yeah,
I think it's really... It's nice.
The thing under it looks like a fishbone. I don't think it is a fishbone, but I want it to be a fishbone.
It's her rubbish bag, just emptied.
I'm not a fan. I love the bag and I like the shoes. I don't like the print. It's just too busy, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you think everyone's got 3D glasses in the audience?
Oh, that would be cool.
And something's going on.
But you know that there'll be an amazing story behind this. There's always a kind of... And for me, what I like about this collection, actually, I'd be interested to get you guys' thoughts on this, is it feels relevant. It feels like she's looking at what other people are doing, what else is going on in fashion, and she's not aping it in any way, but she's like things like something that's a bit camo-y. We've seen.
But this I prefer to the crazy print.
Why do you prefer that? Just because it feels a bit more her, because it's a bit head back?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I can see that working on a lot of levels. I can see that editorially working. I don't know how well the other print would work. I can't see how you would get that into stories and it feel like a thing.
But maybe she's doing what she does with her tailoring, which is it does just feel so separate from the rest of fashion still. Like that print, as you say, that would be really hard to work into an editorial because it just feels so, not this one, the one before, because it just feels so different, but which kind of ties into what she does with her other pieces. You know, they're not meant to be slung on with a Mary Katranzi dress and some Nicholas Kirkwoods and styled up in an editorial. It's meant to stand alone and be its own kind of thing.
But, you know, I can imagine somebody, you know, serpentine, summer party, very chic, wearing that kind of thing. It's that kind of works for that, but I'm not sold on it. It's not Jill for me.
You were like, give me some shoulders.
I thought Jill was like totally anti-print. I was not expecting to see any print at all, so I'm surprised. It's quite refreshing in that way, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I can't see it working particularly well. I can't really visualise it on someone just yet.
Do you think she's bowing to kind of fashion pressure? She's doing things that are a bit more street style friendly, a bit more Instagrammable? Or
I don't think Jill's the type of woman that kind of bows
You're like,
to
no.
pressure. Yeah.
Street style friendly.
Yeah, I used that sentence. That happened.
Horrific.
Now we're talking.
This is nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've got the real Jill back in the
Clean
house.
again.
What is it that pleases you so much about it?
I think it's the lines. I just like really clean lines, and it's for me it just makes me happy when I see that. It's.
Did you love her? Have you always loved Jill? Did you like her early work? What was so special about that?
I don't know. I guess when I was younger, when I first started buying into fashion, I was living in Leeds, and I would go into like Harvey Nichols and stuff, and I would just talk to the sales assistants, and they introduced me to Margiela, they introduced me to loads of labels, and they introduced me to Jill. And this is back sort of 97 when I first properly started buying clothes. And I don't know what it was about Jill, it just felt almost a step above all the rest of the fashion. And I think particularly for me living in Leeds where everything was so showy, and like the fashion was, you know, it would always be about how much you'd spent on something and, you know, how visible your branding was. And what I liked about Jill was that it felt expensive, but it wasn't in your face. And I think that's just always stayed with me. And something that I equally felt about Margiela was that it was never in your face, and that, you know, you'd get a nice pair of trousers and they're just like a nice pair of trousers, and it wasn't, you know, making a fashion statement. It just looked good.
But then some of the accessories that we've seen at Jil Sander are quite. Do you find that people come to them as a kind of it accessory, or do people?
They are. That's true, actually.
Even the ones I know everyone talks about like the paper bags, but even some of the ones she's done since being back there are quite.
They're great, actually.
Yeah, they're
and
really
they do
great.
really, really well. And they are a bit edgier, a bit like harder, and very removed from the pieces, actually. Yeah, I think there's an interesting.
Is it a different clientele that buys them to?
Yeah, more varied for
More
certain.
varied.
Yeah,
That's
people
interesting.
buying them, and possibly younger as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's interesting, like the differentiation between her accessories and her clothes.
Well, the boots with the zips around
But-
them, you know, that was very fun. It was a cool.
Do you feel that maybe that's something that she took away from working with a high street brand like Uniqlo?
Yeah.
That actually people want to buy into the brand, but not necessarily, you know, £4,000 coat. And I think it is interesting since she's come back that these pieces are being introduced to the selling collection, and people can actually go in and buy, you know, something affordable.
Del, do you want some more champagne?
Yes, please.
Let's keep going through.
I think the colour palette is really nice throughout this as well. These like pastel colours, the yellow is lovely, and the like stark white as well. I think it's really fresh.
Yeah, I love the yellow.
I'm not mad keen on the shoes.
I quite like the shoes, but I think I like them because it reminds me of Simone Rocha, which I'm not just
I
saying
was
because I'm
thinking
wearing
Simone
Rocha.
from the beginning.
That first white look that came out with the boat, I was like, that's Simone. But this is what I meant when I was talking about whether she's doing something that feels a bit more relevant. I think, you know, people looked at the Prada thing, they were like, oh, Louise Gray, and then I look at this and I'm like, oh, Simone. And I'm like, it's quite nice. You think, are people looking at what's going on in London? And I like this kind of idea of things trickling up and trickling down, and I don't think this is in any way copying Simone, but I think what's nice is a lot of girls dress like that. You know, they wear a pretty dress now with kind of a big clunky shoe. And
Are they always in flats throughout Jill's shows?
No.
She does do
I
a
think
heel.
these have a
And
heel.
they're all
yeah,
wedges,
yeah.
aren't they, or something?
Yeah,
Yeah, they
they've
look
got
like
heels.
wedge.
If you look, you can see them from the side actually in the close-up. They've got like a big chunky heel. It's not like
You're
a
never
full-on
going to
wedge.
see like a stiletto in a Jill show, are you? Or like a Jill woman like rocking a stiletto in
I
her
don't
Jill.
know. I can imagine.
Really?
I can imagine
You
a
just want
stiletto.
that.
Yeah, you-
yeah, really, really pointy.
A pointy one.
That's beautiful, though.
I like the casting as well.
Yeah, the casting is really, really strong.
Thank you.
I love this.
Yeah,
me
and I
too.
love all
this.
these cuts. I just think
Yeah.
the tailoring is exceptional. And whether she's doing something that's on pattern fabric, which I don't feel so sort of strongly about, or doing something on the plainer fabrics, I just think the tailoring is so great. The necklines, they're very strong, very feminine,
But is
and
that a
quite bold.
skirt? Or is it?
I think
It
it's
looks
a
like
dress.
it's connected.
We saw that in white
Yeah.
earlier, and
Yeah.
you could see more obviously that it was connected. But to me, this, I think that point that you made is really, really true. Those prints, while they were more obviously feminine, to me this feels more feminine for her because it feels more authentic to what Jill does. And
But it still has her trademark all over
Exactly.
it. You can really.
I'd love to feel the fabric of that because it looks like it's got quite a weight to it.
Yeah.
and if you saw someone wearing that, you just want to go talk to them. It goes back to what Dal said. You'd want to go over and be like, who's your dress by? And
Yeah, I think
They
that's
look amazing.
an incredible dress.
Silence.
let's see the
Yeah.
next look.
This is a very like classic Jill shape, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but then that appeals to a certain kind of shopper,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah.
Can you imagine something
Yeah,
like that
that's
selling
like your
through?
safer option.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
She's really focused on the midriff, hasn't she, throughout the collection?
Yeah,
That's
I've
like
seen
the
that
area.
on
I did like,
exposed.
I like
Yeah.
the midriff. I like all these sort of tops then with the tailored jacket, but I'm not so sure about this.
I don't know. I kind of like this. In a weird way, I'm thinking J.W. Anderson.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I think it's
I get
that.
that.
I think it's because of the movement, so we're thinking it's a ruffled skirt. Maybe that's what. But I think.
There's something really 90s and a
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah,
bit
it is
ugly about
90s.
that.
Yeah.
But I like it, and I like the colour. It's kind of wrong.
I was going to ask about this because we had a conversation about when we were talking on our Prada panel about how designers who move things forward and the best designers are always ones that do things that are ugly. And it got me thinking a bit about Jill because it's not, it can be wrong sometimes. You look at it and you're like, why do I like that? And I was like, I've cracked fashion. Ugly things are new. So I was like, maybe that is true. Maybe that's what it's about.
That's like the MA, Central St Martin's MA kind of like gold standard rule that is put in everyone's heads is like the uglier the better, and then like the uglier it is, the cooler it is. If you do anything that's remotely beautiful, it's like, no, that's so old. But it's just kind of true. And then everybody does the clash technique, which is like clash something beautiful, clash something ugly, and it's like, wow, you've come up with a formula. It's a bit cliche.
I think beauty can scare people though, so it's much easier. It's not easier, sorry, to do something ugly, but it's definitely very difficult to make something beautiful.
But then I think Prada, what's so interesting about Mrs. Prada is she always does stuff that is beautiful. The collection was beautiful, but it was really ugly.
I think with Mrs. Prada, she always shocks you with something that you're not expecting, and you kind of think it's really ugly, but then by the third time you've seen it, you think actually that's kind of incredible.
But I think that's what's clever about this because it's very. This is actually, to me, it is beautiful. That girl looks absolutely stunning, but there's something ugly about it, and you can't quite work out what it is.
I think the belt is
The belt
seriously
is-
90s.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sort of.
Not sure
I've
about
definitely
that.
got one of those in my wardrobe.
Yeah, I think I have one of those.
12.
I don't know. I'm kind of feeling it.
Maybe
Like
90s is good.
Love that.
This feels like more of a proposition about fashion than some of the stuff we've seen before. Before it felt like she was making her mark on her own label, whereas this feels like she's like, okay, I'm back, I've established myself back at Jill, now I'm going to say something about fashion rather than just about Jil Sander. I don't know if this just feels more now, it feels more like a statement about what's...
That's very you, I think, that look. You could wear that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I could rock the whole collection.
I'll say it. Come to matches, I'll tell you that.
Okay, good. Well, you've sold Jil Sander to me, all I want to
Yeah.
do now is go buy a Jil Sander coat.
Good.
I mean, I love that. Just the cut of it, everything.
The necklines.
Yeah, it's
Really
it's
beautiful,
great.
isn't it?
Dal, what's your take?
I think, these are really, they almost, because they look so nothingy, that's why they're quite interesting. I think that's what's kind of got us all excited about them.
She has definitely been more playful in the accessories, going back to that point you made, this kind of a pull slidey-esque shoe she's done, and the Simone Rochery type brogues, and even that kind of shiny back, that's where we're seeing the kind of excitement.
But again, it's because she's got a really good understanding of who her woman is, because it's the type of woman that would do that, would wear something like immaculately cut in kind of like quite a neutral shade, but then have like a crazy accessory that's really, a bit more out there, because they're willing to do that with their bag or their shoes, but they want to be quite kind of clean with their outfit.
This is incredible.
You love this, don't you?
I love this, yeah.
What do you like about that so much? Because it's kind of a bit wrong as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really like it.
You're just shocked.
It's I don't know. Again, it's that thing I'd really like to touch it. And I think editorially that would work really well. I can't imagine many women buying that piece. But I think in terms of shooting, I think it would be really good.
Really, really good, yeah.
It's really well cast, even in that picture. It's great.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot, because it's Milan and there's not much else to talk about, we've talked a lot about how sex is coming back. We've talked about how fashion's becoming very sexy, and obviously that's something natural that you talk about in Milan, but we've also talked a bit about it across London. We've seen more flesh. To me this feels a bit sexier, maybe it's the midriffs. But do you guys agree that we're seeing sex back? Does this feel...
like intellectual sexy, this.
Yeah, for
me,
Jil Sander and sexy don't really...
No.
Do you not think? I think this is sexy. That girl looked really sexy.
But I think it's mysterious sexy, right?
Yeah.
Because it's understated, so it's a bit like the person at a house party that doesn't talk too much. It's not the person that corners you in the room and goes, blah, 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 which is maybe this sort of
The Gucci
newer
woman.
London design. Or, yeah, exactly. So it's a kind of, I guess it depends, it's like defining the word sexy. But there's something mysterious and understated about it. Yeah.
But I don't think sexy anymore is kind of showy. I think, everyone would call J.W. Anderson, they'd say that there's something quite sexy about it, or something related to sex about it. It's almost fetishistic. And it's the same with Simone Rocher. There's something, she does those cutout panels. You just sort of like eyes lit up when I said Simone. And I think what we see as sexy now is quite different. I don't know.
I just think there's lots of designers that are sexless, which is why we're talking about it, because there are so many designers that obviously look like there's no sex in their collections, and they're just, there's 32 exits of really nice dresses, and they almost have no life to them. So I think that throws the spotlight then onto the conversation about where sex is then.
That's because from a design point of view, it's very difficult to be sexy and cool. So it's much easier to be sexless and immediately cool. So it's a really difficult balancing act to get right. I think, Jill, I agree with Richard that it's not, I wouldn't associate sexy with this at all, but it has a kind of like subversive element, like the midriff and certain, flesh on show that is interesting, but definitely not sexy, I don't think.
But it's very cool.
Very cool, yeah.
Does anyone get the right balance between sexy and cool?
I'm trying to think, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I think Celine is quite sexy and cool. I think when you see a Celine woman, you do think, God, you look really amazing. You look hot.
Yeah, maybe because it's more fluid. Maybe has a slight, it's softer than Jill, I think.
I think Lanvin is sexy and cool.
Yeah, playful as well, isn't it? It's a bit like some of the people, like quite tongue in cheek. Anyone else?
I don't know.
It's really hard.
It's hard. Well, I think what Simone did, I was interested in what Simone does with all that sheer stuff. What she does is very cool. It's very forward thinking, but it's sexy. She's done a lot of kind of peekaboo stuff, like this season, especially with those cutouts on the side of skirt. I think that's sexy. Like, if I saw a woman wearing that, I would...
Like,
I would
it's hinting, yet not overt. I think it's kind of, if it goes too overt, then it's too sort of obvious.
Do people want to be
Sexy is
sexy,
never
though?
obvious.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Do people want to be...
I think it depends how you define sexy. If you define sexy as that kind of like 90s Versace women, no. But to me...
I think
if someone said you look sexy, I'd take that as a compliment. I wouldn't if I was wearing...
But I don't know whether... I think a lot of women wouldn't. In this age of, kind of like putting nuts magazines in plastic covers and caps on page 3.
Sexy,
and
that's just
cheap.
Yeah, but there is an element of that, you're relating cutouts on a dress revealing skin to sexiness, tits in a magazine to a lot of people. There's also sexiness because there's that there's that openness there. You know, when we see skin, we say it's sexy. That's why we're talking about it
I
now.
wouldn't want to look hot. I'd want to look sexy.
Oh.
Because sexy, I think, is clever. It's cool. You know, it's smart. I don't know. What do you think? Would you like it if someone said you look sexy?
It
Don't like it when the questions get turned on me.
Yeah, you like asking them as well. I just say it's like broadcasters. You're like, so. Yeah, never want to answer a question. I think you definitely want to look desirable. I don't think that sexy is always a compliment. I guess it depends what you're wearing and it depends who it's from, right? But I would say that you can look very sort of desirable in many ways. Sexy wouldn't be the first word that I'd come to with this collection at all. But I don't think it would be the first sort of compliment. I think there'd be other things that I'd sort of...
rather be defined as.
Yeah, that I'd like to be defined as.
I don't think of sexy as relating to a man. I wouldn't think, if someone said I look sexy, I wouldn't think of that as being attractive to a man. I'd see it as more like, this isn't about getting a guy, but she's showing a lot of flesh, but she's not doing it to get a guy. And I think that's kind of, that strand of sexiness I find quite interesting. It's the same with Simone. You know, those cutouts in the dress, they're not there to kind of flash your leg to get someone to buy you a drink. They're there because it's...
But to me, even the word sexy in itself feels a bit sort of like something's obvious. I think that's what it is. Whereas if there's other words that can describe what sexy is, again, it's this... I know it sounds, you know, a bit whatever, but it's kind of...
tantalising.
Yeah, then these are sort of different...
Look in the Waitrose food magazine.
I mean, I guess for me, my idea of a woman looking really sexy is when they look so amazing that they're almost unapproachable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, that's just, like, you just look incredible and actually a bit fierce, and I don't really think I can come and speak to you because you might be a complete bitch.
Well, I think
that, I think, is...
Sexy is like mystery, I think, as well, and that thing. I think
it doesn't have to mean available, I don't think. Yeah.
Did that help clear some things up?
I think it did. I think it
We're learning lots about language today
We
as
talked
well.
about sexiness on a panel before, so I feel like we made some strides there. Thank you.
But it's clearly not about showing flesh, because it's about the silhouette, isn't it? Because she's showing flesh and showing the midriff, but if that was a tight, skin-tight silhouette, we'd probably be saying something else. But because of the shapes that she's creating around it, it's moving away from it being... It's interesting what you said about sexy and obvious, because nothing about that is obvious. It's when designers do... you know, skin-tight dresses and plunging, you know, all becomes very obvious. But then there are a lot of women out there that want to do obvious and like those looks, and they do, you know, we're in a bit of a bubble in London, but elsewhere, naming places, but there are women that want to show off their figure, and to them showing off their figure is sexy, and so they want to do a skin-tight dress and, you know, boobs up here and everything.
Alex Fury, when he was on one of the panels, made a really interesting point that's kind of stuck with me when looking at the collections about being physically comfortable and mentally comfortable. And he said for a lot of women, it's actually the pieces that are most physically uncomfortable, so a really tight dress where your boobs are really squished in, you can't really breathe, where you feel incredibly physically uncomfortable, but mentally you feel very comfortable because you know that you look nice. So I guess like a Hervé Leger dress is a really good example of that, where you're probably physically incredibly uncomfortable, you know, you can't really wear proper underwear, you can't walk properly, but mentally you're like, I look good. And I think that's kind of quite an interesting thing with fashion at the moment, with something like this, that I think a lot of women wouldn't feel comfortable kind of naturally in this because they wouldn't feel like they look nice in a conventional way. I thought that was
also, this is quite, I mean, I don't know if you put that on a woman with breasts, that's going to look really different, because those flaps are going to kind of sit up and it's going to change the whole thing. So I'd imagine when it translates into stores, it might even have a panel underneath it, or it will have like or we'll see it kind of shot with a t-shirt underneath or something like that, which will take it. I think it's always really misleading just taking something at face value in these shows, because these girls are not the customers. Physically, they're not the customers. So we've always, you know, you've always got to kind of think around
in terms of age,
that. So yeah, that dress on her could look be a version of sexy, but actually that on a 5'7" Brazilian millionairess might not be so sexy, or be sexy in a different way.
Yeah. So we've gone back to a print for the last look.
Still that same cut, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the cut, but I'm still not sold on the print.
You don't like the print?
You like the print, do you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Is it just because it feels fresh? It feels like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you prefer this to the plain one that was there?
No, I think the plain one just doesn't sort of surprise me.
Yeah.
Whereas, I guess there's something about this print that I find quite interesting.
If you saw that look, though, you wouldn't say that's a Jil Sander collection.
No.
I think that's what I find quite interesting about it.
But do you think Jil Sander customers want to be surprised? I don't.
I think that she's like the reliable sort of,
go-to.
you know, she's the go-to sort of stoic kind of.
But maybe this is about growing a new customer then, because there is still plenty available for her shopper that's been with her for decades, and maybe that's what this is about a little bit, that those women will still be able to go into matches and get that great jacket that we have seen.
But I don't think that is going to get her a new customer.
Yeah, fair.
It's difficult.
Do you know what I mean?
Print is notorious for doing really well, and so even designers that are really anti-print, they always throw them in or throw them into the showroom because they will sell really well. I don't know why that is, but it just seems to be the golden rule that print really flies off. So this is probably going to do quite well for her, even though it isn't very Jill, and we don't think it will probably sell better than the plain one. I could guarantee it. Yeah.
It feels a bit token to me. I think she should stay with her guns.
Just be harder.
Yeah.
But again, going back to her stint with Uniqlo on the high street, you know, maybe this is something that she's picked up from you know, producing mass market clothes, and you know, maybe she has learned that she has to throw some print in there.
That's interesting. Have you noticed more of a sort of, because you mentioned this a little bit before when you mentioned Uniqlo, have we noticed more of a commercial sensibility to what she does since she's come back to before?
Not really.
No.
I think with the accessories, definitely,
Yeah.
but I don't think she's really holding back with her aesthetic.
Where would we like to see Jil Sander go next? In terms of at her own label?
I want her to kick Abercrombie & Fitch out of her original store in London.
Get it back.
And get it back. Because that is when I first moved to London to go to college, that was one of my
That was
first
crazy, that
shops
store.
I went into. This massive space with like 2 dresses in it. But it was almost like a religious, which sounds so wank to say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it, a religious experience. But it was so kind of hardcore. And so now, but it isn't now, that I think we miss a space like that we miss shops like that, particularly in London. I don't think we've got many great shops in London like that real impact. We talked again about Christopher Kane and Chris's shop and how he wants that to be his world. I would love there to be a bit more of a Jil Sander world that people can go into, and I'd be really interested to see if it would be as empty / minimal as the original store was kind of in the late 90s, early noughties. That's what I think then we need to have a shop.
Do you agree with that, Richard? Would you like to go worship at the altar of Jil Sander?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. But I just think we're in a really different place economically. I don't think it's viable to have that kind of space with, I mean, let's face it, there was so little product in there for that space.
Amazing.
I just think,
Museum,
I mean, it is amazing, and it was amazing, but I don't know if there would be a bit of a backlash against it. It's just sort of too extravagant now, I think. I would love to see it. Love to have it back.
And I can never find many pictures of that store either.
No,
I don't know if I'm not looking in the right place, but I love it because it's kind of not Googleable. Every time I'm talking about it to someone, I can't just Google it and find a picture to show them, and that is really refreshing.
That's her thing, isn't it? She's discreet.
Yeah.
It's too cool for us.
Discreet luxury.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Let's all go wish we were the Jil Sander woman. I do. She's fabulous. Thank you.